Welcome, everyone. Okay, I see another candidate joined as well. Welcome. Hi there. Okay, yes.
No, I just wonder if they have trouble connecting to the audio or not, but I think they have. All right. Is this, yeah, Mohammed, you have to hit connect. It's on the lower left, the audio, Mohammed, if you hear me. Okay, sorry. Go, Sky. My bad.
Yeah, we're just gonna. All right, everyone. Hello. Welcome to Politics NY with Sky. This is the debate version, but it's not really a debate. It's more of a community discussion because I think debates are boring. I think it's more fun to have a discussion. So it's like a conversation. So Schneps Media, that's us. This is my editor, Steve Witt. We are the only media outlet providing a platform for every single New York City council candidate to have their voice heard and show their faces and personalities. So this is District 18. I have 4 candidates with us right now. There are more than these 4 running, and everyone was invited to participate tonight. So if there are other candidates that join, you're welcome to join the conversation. I will let you in as a panelist, other candidates. So District 18, it's nice to meet you. You may be familiar with my 3 questions in 3-minute series where I've highlighted some of you. And for those of you that I haven't, please reach out. Let's get your video scheduled because this week is the last week of that series. So tonight's debate, which is really a community conversation, will be fast and fun. So each time you speak, just try and keep it short. That's all that we ask. With me, like I said, is Steve Witt. He is the editor-in-chief of PoliticsNY and political editor for Schneps Media. These are our 2 logos here. So District 18, let's just begin. We'll jump into it. We'll have each candidate just tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're running for
What
office.
neighborhoods are these? Again, I'm sorry, Scott.
Yes, the neighborhoods, Soundview, Castle Hill, Parkchester, Classen Point, and Harding Park. So each candidate maybe say what part of the district you're from, where you live, and a little bit about your background. And we'll take it off from there. We'll begin the conversation. So let's begin with Michael Beltzer. We'll go in alphabetical order by last name.
Hey, good afternoon. Buenos tardes, assalamu alaikum. My name is Michael Beltzer, like Seltzer with a B, and I'm a proud working class parent from the Southeast Bronx. You know, why I'm running is simple. I want to make sure that we comprehensively plan our community against gentrification so that we get to stay. You know, what that looks like is building more social and senior housing, limited equity co-ops, rent to own options, and using the local income levels. We want to exert worker power by supporting and expanding unions, creating worker cooperatives, universal retirement plans, and raise the minimum wage in New York City to $20 an hour. We want public power, public banking, and public internet to help reduce the fees on those services or eliminate them altogether. And of course, make housing, healthcare, and education human rights in New York City. Somebody who's served in the community and institutions such as the local community board and currently the Community Education Council. And when I've been out in the streets, what really keeps a drive to me is to make sure that, you know, we're told that the Bronx is the poorest place in the country, but when I go around, I see people working hard. So we contend that it's the most exploited place in the country. And I'm running to make sure that the working class gets what they've earned.
Thank you. Let's hear from Amanda next.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amanda Farias. I was born and raised in Soundview and live in Parkchester. I'm a tenant, a Teamster, and an Afro-Latina. After years of failed leadership and disinvestment, our community deserves a leader who fights for the working class and invests in our community. I'll be ready to do that and get to work on day one. I brought jobs into the community through my work at a nonprofit and community services and programming for the last 3 years, serving as our state committee woman. I have worked in about 5 years at City Hall and managed a citywide nonprofit, managing both the legislative and annual budgets for these groups. I have the experience to lead and deliver for this community, and I'm hoping to earn the vote of this community, and I'm asking voters to rank me as their #1 choice on the ballot. Growing up in the Bronx, the community has always had my back, and in the city council, I'll have yours. Thank you.
Thank you. And Darlene.
Some internet issue. Sorry about that. So again, my name is Darlene Jackson, and I think, I'm a lifelong advocate. I think through my lived experience growing up in poverty and with my family being directly impacted by, systemic racism with homelessness, incarceration, drug addiction, and has led in the career path of working in the nonprofit sector and also within city agencies and grassroots organizations. And so I was able to see witness firsthand the systemic disparities within our institutions as an advocate working with the most marginalized communities, making sure that they had the adequate resources and to keep families together. Essentially I started working in child welfare and then within city agencies and then within grassroots organizing. And I think what has led me, running for office that kind of has landed on my doorstep. And I feel like through my 20 years of experience, fighting on the front lines as a community organizer, as an advocate, as a parent working out in a public school system, dismantling this very oppressive system, and and being involved in community-led solutions has really inspired me to take this type of experience at City Hall, where I spend most of my advocacy at City Hall, at public hearings, with community-led solutions, chasing these politicians at every corner of the city and making sure that any policy that's put forth or investments put forth is by the people who are directly impacted by the very system that has kept them at the very bottom. And so I feel like, District 18 has not had a leadership at City Hall. And we have an opportunity I have an opportunity to demonstrate what representation actually looks like, which is a partnership with the constituents who elect them into office and really building community leadership and community ownership to making sure that anything that's put forth includes the voices and the experiences of people who are directly impacted by the very system that's designed to keep them. This doesn't promote upward mobility. And so I feel I have the experience for the past 20 years, and that's what our community lacks. And I'm ready. I've been doing this work then, and I'm still doing that even as a candidate. And I'm committed to doing this beyond elections, whatever the outcome is.
Thank you. So Mohammed, are you there? I see you on the screen, but are you there? I don't know if he's there, but as soon as you're there, we're happy to include you as part of the conversation.
Just talk so we know, and we'll hear you.
Okay, and I neglected to mention that we have a live audience watching this debate, and it is being recorded, and you can watch all of our debates and meet all of these political hopefuls here on the screen on our website, politicsny.com, and you can see the debates at politicsny.com/debates. So because there's 3 of you, we can make this more of a conversation. And our first question is, and we'll go in the same order, to talk about the biggest issue in the community and how you would fix it. And then if the other candidates want to respond to that issue, we can make it like a conversation like that. So let's begin with Michael Beltzer to talk about the biggest issue in District 18 and what you would do to fix it. And then other candidates can chime in on that.
Looks like Mohammed might have connected his audio. Mohammed, did you connect your audio? No, I didn't. Okay. Yeah, so the biggest issue that by far that we come across is with housing, whether people are getting priced out, whether the housing is adequate, or whether they actually have any idea if they can stay in the community that they love or grew up in. And so the way that we're going to address that is with a comprehensive community-based plan. This is something that the community already said was a good idea when I was back on the community board in 2015. And what we can do is make sure that we're getting the goals, dreams, visions, needs, and wants of everybody in the community, so we can start planning for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, what type of housing is needed in the community, where we should put it, and how it could work with local community institutions and creating jobs and economic growth with it. People have been excited about that. But in the short term, we were able to win, rent relief at the state level. So, I was proud to help support a lot of those elected officials that did that work up in Albany. And then, we should also be doing things like universal rent control. So in the short term, people are in the district, some just recently got 6-10% rent increases. That would not happen if we had a universal rent control. So that's something else in the short term that I believe we can fight for.
I'll open it up to the other candidates to talk about this issue that Michael raised, housing and rent control and those issues.
Amanda?
Sure. I mean, I would definitely agree with one of the bigger issues here in the community is housing. I've spoken to thousands of voters or tens of thousands of voters at this point, and that's definitely one of the big issues that we are bringing up. Particularly, I think, we really need to be able to fund and defend NYCHA. We're seeing huge rates of NYCHA developments throughout the city being privatized, and we need to make sure that we are guaranteeing the future of public housing by creating new and dedicated funding streams for NYCHA and banning all privatization efforts. Really, the municipality needs to have, or the state needs to have, funding to ensure that our residents throughout the 5 boroughs and throughout our city and our borough can actually have access to affordable, secure housing. Yeah, and so, I'll end it there just so we can have more time to speak. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna add a little bit to what Michael was saying as far as like one of the issues plaguing out District 18, is having fair housing. But I do have another, I feel there's 3 biggest issues with our district. I agree with Michael Beltzer that, we do need to have fair housing. Just to add to that, what I noticed throughout this pandemic is that the people who are most like isolated from the discussion as far as equity is our senior citizens, because when we put affordable housing on in these lotteries, they have to go through the same process. They may have a priority, but they still have a waiting list, and our seniors don't have time to be on a waiting list. And some of them are being pushed out to homelessness into our city's southern system. That's what I noticed. One of the biggest issues that's plaguing our District 18 now during this pandemic. And I hope that as we recovering from this pandemic, that they are put at the forefront who are the most marginalized population. But I also have to add, with Amanda was saying, as far as the NYCHA residents, I'm happy that, even with this pandemic, working closely with the tenant association presidents within the NYCHA developments and our College District, and making sure their voices are heard with this transformational plan that NYCHA has put forth. And they've been meeting very dedicated on, every Sunday, and really pushing back on making sure that anything that's put forth, that they are part of that decision-making process. And so I've been very privy to be a part of those discussions, not every Sunday, but for the most part, making sure that they get updated information, to making sure that they have adequate information and that they can make informed decisions. But just to add a little bit to what I think another issue that's plaguing our District 18, is that we can't talk about economic recovery without prioritizing our small businesses who are the fabric of our community. And I would say I'm the only candidate, for District 18 that has been fighting on the front lines with our small business owners, making sure that there's a bill right now at City Hall that they have that's been sitting there at the committee, has enough sponsors, but because we have politicians who have relationship with special interest groups and the real estate lobby, they are not they're not prioritizing the people who can create the revenue in our district, and making sure that our young people, I have an adolescent who's about to graduate high school and going away to college, and he should be able to work right in his community, but he can't do that when storefronts are closing right before our eyes. People who have been in this community for the past 20 years who are now closing down because politicians don't have the political will to making sure that they pass this bill, the Small Business Job Survival Act. And right now we're petitioning to making sure we get enough signatures and making sure that it's passed through this physical budget.
You talked about, sorry, Steve.
I just have a couple very quick questions, real quick. One, how many senior centers are in the district currently? Because when you mentioned seniors, I'm curious about that. Does anybody know?
I would say roughly, I know for the most part that some of the niche developments are connected with a senior center. I know Soundview has a senior center. I believe Sotomayor. So the senior centers are connected that I've been privy to, that I've been working with on the front lines during this pandemic are connected to the niche developments.
Mhm.
How many
But
night
they do have-
development here in the
they-
district?
They do have supportive housing developments throughout the district, which I've been able to help people do with a discrete application process, which is very tedious. But they got those support services come with our service providers, our community-based organizations, who's been walking them through that process. So I would say the one that's connected to the niche developments, but there's also supportive housing for them that currently exists, but needs to be expanded and invested on so that our seniors be able to age with dignity in the district.
And how many NYCHA developments are there roughly?
I believe it's about 9.
So
So-
that,
Amanda.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, we have 4 senior facilities. And then we have 1 associated with almost every NYCHA development, and we have 7 NYCHA developments throughout the community.
and are the senior centers currently all closed because of COVID?
Most of them are closed, except the senior buildings themselves that actually are, are like community centers, because they're a senior building with senior services.
So yeah, so there's 9 or 10 NYCHA developments, depending if you're counting the buildings they have over in the west part of the district. With the senior centers, they're not all equal. For the Soundview Senior Center, for example, they didn't have food for like 3 years. And I remember like the first time I ran for office, I ran for a small position called district leader. Just going out there, just trying to see how people reacted to politics and government, and they didn't have food. So I ran in 2017, and I saw the same thing. They didn't have food. So I was like, you know what? I'll give the council person a year. Why not? See if he gets the food program back. Did not. So we just went out there, rallied with the seniors, gained their trust. They decided to go on the news because it's a big thing for people in our community to go on the news. There's a lot of people who don't complain about things because they don't want to be kicked out of their homes. They don't want to lose their jobs. They don't want to be harassed. If you complain about things at night, you get harassed very easily. So for them to go on the news, they got their program back. And that's kind of like what we need to keep doing, is empowering people to speak up for themselves. I think we have great candidates on this forum here tonight, but it's not so much about the candidate that wins. It's about what we're getting the people to do for themselves. And I think that's really how we're gonna. When the senior programs do come back, the seniors we have to make sure that they're writing to all their elected officials and getting the resources in. As well, because they're not all equal. I can tell you that.
I see.
Yeah.
And Darlene mentioned small business. What are the 2 or 3 commercial corridors in the district? I'm just curious. People go out and shop, or any restaurants or anything.
Are you asking anyone in
Yeah,
specific?
anyone in particular?
I think we all would agree White Plains Road near Bruckner Plaza is a commercial strip. Westchester Avenue and Castle Hill Avenue are probably our major commercial strips here in the district.
Is there a bid? Is there a business improvement district,
There is a bid on Westchester Ave. Sorry, Darlene, I see you.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I'll let you finish.
No, there's a bid on South Row. There's a bid on Westchester Ave. And they've been trying to build or create a bid for a really long time on Castle Hill Avenue.
So I think those are merchant associations, no?
Maybe.
Yeah, I'm for instance against bids because they're actually taxing on a lot of the smaller businesses, and a lot of the smaller businesses don't feel represented in the ways that the bids have been working. A lot of the bids get very politically connected, and they serve the special interest. So it's easy for like the McDonald's and the multinational corporations to be part of bids, and they push these often in tandem with elected officials, and they kind of serve as like these quasi governmental, but also kind of patronage kind of places. So I think they don't offer what the community needs, but I do think that we need to strengthen the merchant associations that are there, because these merchant corridors, like I've seen Darlene working and talking with them. You know, they're in need of recovery, but they're also in need of people to know that they're there. You know, people are losing the touch with ordering off the apps and stuff. We need to change the merchant corridors to promote more small business uses along the curbside. So we have things like open dining. I think we need to make that, well, it is permanent in some ways, but we need to expand and facilitate that a lot more in these areas. We also have Parkchester. We have shopping areas along Metropolitan is a good commercial overlay. And I think we could be converting like some of these areas, parking into more outdoor uses for the small businesses, whether it be, you know, providing spaces for entrepreneurs, for restaurants, and there's a good person in Parkchester has a electric push cart, bike push cart, you know, like, so more businesses can happen that way as well for the community.
Now, it's interesting that, Michael, you said that you're against bids. I would think, you know, there's 76 different bids throughout the whole city. I would think that the bid program is one of the more popular programs to help in these commercial districts and to enable certain neighborhoods to be better. Do either of the other candidates want to talk about their feelings on the bid program and how it may help or hurt the community, in your opinion?
Well, I think, sorry, my internet connection is very poor, sorry. So I know historically there's a bid in Castle Hill that's, I think, is in a process of like strengthening itself to be, you know, it's not at the full capacity as far as the base is there, but the infrastructure needs to be built more. But historically, bids are not. The only problem that I have with the bids is that there's a division between there's a pushback with small business owners and our street vendors, and there's no way that I cannot see. You can't talk about small business owners without talking about our street vendors, because as soon as you come up Westchester Avenue, you see our small business owners and our street vendors working. They have this. There's a relationship right there that exists. You cannot turn a blind eye. It's hard to ignore. And so I was very fortunate to be a part of the Street Vendors Project. They just passed legislation this past January to making sure that they lift the caps, because it was hard for people who are primarily people of color from the immigrant population to get, you know, permits at affordable rates, because they had to get it to the black market. And, you know, the law hasn't changed for permits for since the 80s, and they just recently passed legislation this past January to make sure that they lift the caps. The only thing that we, as advocates, is that when you win campaigns, is that ensuring that when it's time to do the implementation process, to making sure they are creating this advisory board, to making sure that there's this enforcement, to making sure that people are one, educated on it, and two, they're following the new guidelines. And so I would say that the bids have to include the small and micro businesses that normally has 2 or 3 people working in a business, as opposed to you go into White Plains and you have more bigger corporations they actually closed down over. There's a lot of stores that's closed down on White Plains Road, but we need to be invested in more as Michael was saying, as entrepreneurship, making sure that people who live here are able to have a business and create their own revenue and have our own families and neighbors be able to work there. And so I think the bid can coexist, but it has to making sure that it includes everyone, like our street vendors and our small micro businesses who has less people working there.
Mm-hmm. Amanda, did you want to weigh in on this topic at all with small business or?
No, I mean, I agree with what's been stated. I mean, I think that, in District 18, we have street vendors that are a part of the community. They are the ones that are helping us address the elements of food insecurity that we're facing even before this pandemic, and it's only been exacerbated even more during the pandemic. I really think that in terms of bids, a coexisting, a cooperation, an inclusion of is probably best to move forward, especially where we need to be able to see that street vendors are included in the process and understanding the licensing, the permitting, even creating a system where we have a database that they're included in, an outline of roads that they can or cannot participate in. You know, being in competition with small business or storefronts isn't necessarily, I think, something that impacts our commercial strips here in the community, but I could see how that is citywide. But that shouldn't mean that street vendors are policed or there's some sort of level of enforcement discouraging it. I do think that it's important that there is an education process to get more people to be included and include them into the bids.
Now, is there any other topic? I think Michael had mentioned housing, and then Darlene talked a little bit about housing and small business. Amanda, was there another topic or issue that you'd like to bring to the forefront that the other candidates could respond to that's top of mind for you and your campaign?
Yeah, I think, you know, in a post-pandemic New York right now, post-pandemic Bronx, in our community, jobs and the economy are really important. We have people right now that are really unemployed, that are doubled up and tripled up in their household with family members. And I think hardworking people in our community deserve policies that promote economic growth, that supports the many, not the privileged few. And we need programs that'll help establish that and sustain meaningful economic growth or economic growth opportunities for every person in our community. I'm running on a municipal jobs guarantee platform that will plan to grow our unionized workforce with jobs that offer dignified wages, benefits, worker protections, and pay equity. I've been primarily focused over the last 3 years in creating unionized jobs for young people and adults through 3 different trades. And I believe that's the only way to actually bolster up the working middle class and keep Bronxites in the Bronx. You know, Darlene mentioned earlier about her adolescent who's going into college. You know, I believe we should be moving towards a model of college and career for all, not just college for all. We need to bolster up career and technical education. We need to take advantage of the dearth of employment that's happening in a lot of different sectors and titles right now, and invest money into creating jobs to make sure people have careers, not just jobs, right? Actual careers where we can move up and actually take care of our families.
Now, do either candidate, Darlene or Michael, would you like to respond to that or add to anything that Amanda was just talking about? If not, we can move on to the next topic, which
actually, I can actually add to that. So I think one of the ways to kind of overhaul to making sure that people have living wages and that we are promoting equity and upper mobility is because right now the working class is the working poor right now. And so I think when you have a system like public assistance that's not necessarily designed to really provide career or vocational trade that Amanda is, which I agree, but the system that we currently have doesn't promote upper mobility or and it's not equity driven. And so when people who are, you know, working 2 jobs and they pursuing higher education, the minute they get a raise, they lose the support system that allows them to be able to meet their basic necessities. So I feel that we definitely need to overhaul our public assistance so that when people are in need of support services, that they are able to actually, you know, thrive within in careers or whether it's vocational trade, and making sure that we are promoting like jobs, because right now District 18 doesn't even have. We don't even necessarily have a workforce development. We have a jobs plus, and you can miss it if you're not paying attention. So I think what we need to bring in this district, because in order for you to go to workforce, you have to go to District 17 to go to a workforce development. And so I think that's something that we're kind of missing in our district, and we need to be fighting for. And so that for people have the job career readiness and to be competitive in a 21st century workforce.
Yeah, so I think the idea of a jobs guarantee is a very interesting one, and it's definitely one I think should be explored. I think some things that we can do now to start getting a lot of folks back into employment is to extend summer youth employment year round. A lot of these jobs went remote, so there's no reason why people can't do them, from their homes. We should be doing more paid internships with city agencies. So I think that could be a good way of getting people more governmental experience while figuring out which skills can be better supported by city government. So if we do expand into something like a jobs guarantee, we can figure out what jobs to expand the most on, and then. I think we also do have to be looking at things like a universal basic income, because there are a lot of jobs that are going to disappear, whether we like it or not. And we need to make sure that people can still have a dignified life while going and getting a trade degree, learning about trades, or going to higher education, which, by the way, should be free in New York City. And then of course, comprehensively planning our communities. So again, if people are saying this is what kind of things we want in the community, we can make sure, especially in the city council, we have immense use of our land use and zoning. We can incentivize it through the zoning process, and make sure that we're getting in and preparing long-term for these jobs that we'll be creating. So there's not just any old job, because any old job isn't good, but that's why also we need $20 minimum wage. So if people aren't stuck in any old job, at least they're getting paid enough to live, to actually live, yeah.
One thing I do want to add, that I want to make sure that we don't forget is we in our district, we live in a very concentrated immigrant community. We have people from all over. We have people from all over the place, and I feel like, as somebody who's coming into this, in the trenches, talking to folks, one of the things that was so really disheartening for me to encounter is that a lot of the people who are undocumented, is almost like they not a part of this political process.
Mhm.
And and it was really hard for them because they was kind of left out of this economic recovery. But if it wasn't for advocates, holding our state legislature, accountable, I just kind of feel like they are an integral part of this community, and I think they need to be put at the forefront as part of our recovery, especially when it comes to our workforce and having protections after work. Because at the end of the day, when at this pandemic, we realized those are the folks who was deemed essential but was invisible before. And so I think that we need to let's not lose sight of that as we beyond elections.
Okay. Oh, Amanda, do you have your hand raised?
Yeah, no, I just think that was a good point. And I think, while we're here talking about what the city council can do, one of the things I've been advocating for since 2017 when I first ran is actually bringing participatory budgeting into this community. That brings everyone that's undocumented, even all the way up to the age of 12, to be included in our capital budget voting process, where the council member can give up a portion or all of their capital budget and have people in the community block by block plan and give suggestions on what ideas that they would like to see implemented, and then actually vote on it. There's an entire week or two of voting for participatory budgeting. And this is something that 2 different council members here in this community have not brought forward into the district, and so has excluded a lot of members and a lot of young people in the process. And I think additionally, we should be talking about, how do we actually include or establish fair representation in our municipal and state elections? We should be looking to guarantee that voices of our immigrant communities are represented equally by establishing voting in municipal and state elections, regardless of their status. So.
Yeah, and in that vein, specific to your community, let's talk about your predecessor, Ruben Diaz Sr., who's seen as sort of a polarizing figure in the community, right? He's beloved by some and really hated by others. So I'd love to hear people's opinions, because I know a lot of times voters formulate opinions based on the candidate's opinion of other candidates. So let's, talk about your predecessor, what you think of him, and what you would do the same or what you would do differently. And let's start with you, Michael.
First, I would do absolutely everything opposite of what he's done. And I want to give a shout out to Amanda for being brave enough to run the last time when he went for it. I think it took a lot for us at that time to stand up and say, hey, this guy isn't going to represent us. This isn't the future for our community. Something Amanda said was participatory budgeting. That's a real easy one for a city council member to do. He didn't do that. Would do participatory budgeting to the fullest extent that is possible. Would make sure that we have a centrally located office. I believe he put his office in one of the worst places to get to. So it's very hard for people to get to, and it might be connected to a church. That might be the reason why it's there. In terms of fighting for legislation, he didn't fight for any. Definitely making sure that we're fighting for legislation that restores equity for working class people and gets them what they've earned. And really, just showing up. The guy that didn't show up for anything, just kind of been MIA. And he's just stood on all the wrong side of the issues. He's ostracized and really just been evil towards people who he represents, LGBTQ, women, just the things that he was standing for were just in opposition of people's lives. And that's just wrong to me. I would definitely just do everything completely and utterly different. I'm also getting people hooked on getting things handed out to them. He was a state senator before that, and I've run across their team and things that they've done over the years, and the things that they've handed out, what I've heard have been various over the years. And I think we need to get our communities off of the elected officials there to hand out, to hand you something, and as opposed to someone to work with, to be accessible, to listen to, and to really champion you and your life.
Okay, Amanda, let's hear your thoughts.
Thanks for that very comprehensive overview, Michael. I would echo a lot of the things that Michael stated. I think one of the key things, is, I think our personal opinions don't really necessarily matter. I think all of us here can agree that we don't agree with his politics or the way that he's set up for this community. I do think the main points of not bringing in participatory budgeting, where we could have had a more engaged electorate, a more engaged community, to be prepared for even something like the pandemic that we just went through, would have been an ideal situation to be in, that he's neglected from us to have. I think really losing our voice at the table, our negotiation voice at the table for our community, our council district, by being stripped of all of his committees. You have very specific jobs as an elected official, as a city council member. One of those is to negotiate the budget, to write legislation, fight for land use, and to represent a committee. And he actually stripped us of having a vocal voice, someone that could be advocating for the needs and investments in our community. And then I think obviously not having a close enough office space to actually be available. In the past, he's been, everyone says he does really great constituent services. How is that so when there is not a bus or a train to actually get to you? For me, politics is about people. And he's been really self-centered moving through, at least for the very least, the last 4 years, let alone his career before that.
But there is a chunk of the district that really loves him, no? Isn't there a conservative element to the district that's holding on to some of these old school ideas, Darlene?
Yeah. I think I think there are voters that support him for their own reasons, but I think overall, especially now, people are exhausted by him.
Okay.
Are you not going to represent those conservative voters? Are you going to like, well, then now I'm in power, so forget you? I mean, do you want to be a voice for just your supporters or the entire district?
Oh, of course. I think if you want to move away from the self-centered politics of Ruben Diaz Sr., you're going to represent every single person in the community, regardless of whether or not they voted for you.
So, like there's conservative religious people and, so you're determined that their voices be heard too if you were elected.
Absolutely.
Well, I don't think that those voters aren't people that are not open to persuasion and growing. I remember in 2017 I ran, and the big thing was the bathroom bill down in, I forget what state it was, but it was a big issue at the time. And I went into this very conservative household, sat down, and I was like, for me, I have a daughter. I don't know which bathroom to bring her into, right? And the fundamental issue here is that you're having is children being in bathrooms with adults an issue, right? And they fundamentally just shifted in what they were thinking, and they said, "Oh, I never saw it that way." So there are a lot of these people who they may hold a few religious views, but I wouldn't say that they aren't trying to look at society from different points of views. And I think that's why it's important for all of us to be running, because we're also reaching these people and we're having conversations with them, and they're seeing, oh, there's different kind of people who can represent me, and that's ultimately going to be a good thing over time. So I think this idea that there, this block of votes that only cares about one or two things, I just haven't seen that to be true over the course of running 2 races, actually 3 races.
Darlene, yeah.
So I throw my 2 cents in there. And so I think, unfortunately, District 18 did vote in Ruben Diaz Sr., right? You had Michael Beltzer and Amanda Farias who ran in 2017, but at the end of the day, the district came out and they voted for the same they voted for somebody and with this idea and his ideology and his politics.
Right.
And so I think historically, because of the representation that we had before Ruben Diaz was, unfortunately, she was ranked the worst council member in city council. And so for very long, this district has not had a real representation, or they don't necessarily know what that necessarily looks like or what that actually means. And so I think when you have somebody like a Ruben Diaz Sr., who's very disconnected to the issues of this district, because he doesn't have an open door policy. And I know that firsthand, because after he won as a city council member, I visited his office all the way out in Suriga, which is out of sight and out of mind, which is very intentional that he did that. I came to his office like, listen, I'm somebody who lives here. Although we may agree to disagree, I need to understand, like, where can we come to a consensus about how is this going to move forward? And he didn't even have the common courtesy to me come out of his office, and he was physically there, but sent his chief of staff to kind of greet me and give me his business card, and then respond to any of my email correspondence as a follow-up. And not only that, he's the same person who has the authority to appoint people at the local community board. And I was someone who applied to be a board membership, and it was my application was denied, even when the full membership was not even at full capacity, which is 50 members. It was only at like 33. Out of 33 of them, only 11 of them was women. But yeah, my application was denied because I'm somebody who opposed the Bronx political establishment. And so somebody who cannot even we're not going to agree to disagree all the time, but at the end of the day, we all have an end goal. And so we should be you have to have the leadership quality to be able to sit at the table with people, with all stakeholders, and making sure that you're able to get the work done. And what he doesn't demonstrate what he lacks is the participatory budgeting process. And so I was a part of that effort since it was launched in New York City, as a budget delegate, as somebody who was doing the vote with young people. And I would take it as far as making sure that it's part of our in our New York public school system, as young as middle school, as part of the curriculum, and making sure that high school students can even use as an elective course as part of the graduation requirements. But Ruben Diaz Sr., he's old news. Right now, we have an enormous opportunity to change the political landscape, not only District 18, but in New York City. And I think this is the opportunity for bold leadership, people, who's on the front lines, who understand the issues, who live through these issues, and can be able to connect to the people who live here, whose stories are very different, but we all are impacted by the same the system.
Right. Thank you. Steve, do you have a question? I know Steve likes to get in the weeds as we.
Well, I have a couple of things, but I just thought I'd mention that it sounds like you're all very progressive, and crime is going up, and we have a recovery. We've had shootings in Times Square, forget in local neighborhoods. So I'm curious. Do you think that the crime is an issue? And do you think the police should be defunded? And how would you patrol like tourism hubs like Times Square, where a lot of people, even from your district, probably work down there or have jobs within the tourism industry? So, I'm wondering how you see the recovery effort going both in your district and citywide in relation to criminal justice.
I'll be happy to answer that. So, I think so. Since the start of this pandemic, I had to have very tough and uncomfortable conversations. Not only at the community board level, because the community board essentially, like, the average person doesn't even know that it currently exists. So you have the same folks, the same voices, but I see a lot of value in them, a lot of potential in them. But unfortunately, when it comes to public safety and addressing violence, the city has gotten it wrong for far too long. Violence is a public health issue. If you think about the people who come in contact with the criminal legal system are people who are living at or below the poverty line. The majority are people of color. And for too long, our politicians has over-relied on law enforcement to deal with all societal issues. And so I have been almost, the 43rd precinct already know who I am. And so, but the thing about it is that the 43rd precinct, yes, I wholeheartedly believe that we defunded the police. And what that means is divesting from punitive systems and investing in services that's going to address the underlying issues of social of income inequality. And you can do that by trying, the biggest issue with city council is that what they lack the political will and courage is that they wanted to defund the police requires for these people who work in the law enforcement, which is people of color who look like the people who live in my district. However, who went into this law enforcement because they ideally want to do the right thing to protect and serve. However, what the city council lacks is divesting from an excess of over policing and making sure that we have a just transition for these people to making sure they go into other union jobs that's actually addressing our public health crisis. And so I think that's where this new city council administration could be bold and lead about what does public safety actually truly means when it comes to Black and brown communities where I live in District 18. And public safety, that means somebody who has all their basic necessities met, right? Where they have affordable, they have a roof over their head, they have food at their table, they have living wage jobs, their mental wellness is being addressed, with a lot of untreated traumas being exacerbated into layers of violence that's trickling into our communities, where politicians is just relying on law enforcement to deal with it when it's out of their job scope.
Well, but that's within your district. I understand. What about an area like Times Square that depends on tourism?
Can you clarify on that question about as far as Times Square?
Yeah, there was some shootings recently in Times Square, and the city's economy, because of COVID, has suffered a couple $100 million hit on tourism. And you have tourists coming from all over the country and the world. And when there's shootings in Times Square, it's not exactly a good look to bring in tourists.
Well, the thing about it is that we have our government has failed to address our gun laws. You know, people want to talk about this uptick of gun violence during the economic and health crisis, but yet nobody's addressing of how are we gonna address our gun laws, of how the access of these guns is coming to our communities in the first place. And so yet they have these gun buyback programs about, oh, you get an iPad or $200. But at the end of the day, that's not going to end gun violence. That's not going to put an end to gun violence, because at the end of the day, somebody can just go to the next town over in Pennsylvania and still bring a gun over here into New York. And so I think, you know, if you're going to talk about the uptick of gun violence and tourism about in New York City, we have to address our gun laws. And how is that impacting, you know, New York City as a whole? Because it's just too many loopholes at the end of the day. And so you really have to address it. Really have to address like the underlying root causes of why does somebody need to have a gun in the first place? Why do they feel the need to have a gun, right? Is it because it's fear or for safety, right? Why? So I think we always on reactionary mode, and we need to start thinking about the underlying issues to you know, to really to address the root causes of this, because we're gonna be talking in circles at the end of the day. We don't want to perpetuate the same cycle where the last administration has failed to do. And so I think we have an opportunity to change that in his new local elections that we have before us. Let me stop. I'm gonna allow people to say.
Thank you.
I do want to jump in. I think, you know, as a woman of color, I've seen how our policing can unfairly target people of color. And we need to wisely reallocate our resources to ensure that our public safety is prioritized. To me, that means we need to rethink the way we're reallocating resources from our police budget. Rather than overfunding the NYPD press or mounted units, we could be reinvesting those dollars into community programs that bridge our local officers to the community in more meaningful ways. Rather than funding new jails, for example, we could fund reentry programs that help formerly incarcerated individuals so they can actually like have a chance and thrive in our communities. As a city council member, it'll be my job or our job to balance our city's budget while managing our city agencies. And to me, that requires a pragmatic approach that will require us to make smart investment decisions that help our communities prosper while making sure our city operates. I think in a post 9/11 New York City, we're always going to need some sort of unit that directly looks at our 5 boroughs and sees where are there, you know, areas that are maybe vulnerable. And I think areas in the city like Manhattan, like Times Square that you're saying, for example, maybe need a completely different enforcement unit, but they are drastically different than what our local community police departments handle or cases that they take in. And so we really need to be looking at the locality. How are we focusing on public safety? How are our communities being over-policed or impacted by the local PD? But I think that's really how we have to be looking at crime, or these instances of the example that you gave in Pittsburgh.
So since running in 2017, the NYPD has only gotten more money, but people like you, I guess, Steve, don't feel like public safety has increased with it. And, you know, I definitely hear that while we're out there, while we're out in the street. You know, what I'm committed to is defunding the NYPD by $3 billion and moving that money into social services, mental health, reentry programs, addiction treatment, and making sure that we're properly funding education and housing. Like Darlene said, there's a lot of harm that's caused in our communities, and it comes from root causes that need to be addressed. So, you know, I come from Long Island. It was a properly resourced community. A lot of people don't resort to harming others because, you know what, they might have ate that day. You know what, they might have had access to mental health. They are, you know, living in a place that shows that it shows cares and concerns. You know, I think that Times Square example is a bit of a curveball to throw out here, but, you know, let's talk about it a little bit. If we're talking about major hubs, Times Square is the most over-policed place probably in the whole world. I would say. You know, at one point they were walking around with submachine guns and helmets and everything there. There's eyes and cameras every single square inch. So I don't think there's anything in terms of policing that you can do to stop someone from coming and doing what that guy did, which was probably act out of whatever he was feeling that day. And, you know, that's what he decided to do. You know, I think we need to have in like hubs like that, we need to have more crisis intervention teams. We need to have mental health professionals and violence interrupters. You know, there's definitely, I know I've come across situations where I'm able to diffuse a situation where I'm sure somebody in that crowd might have a gun, but you know what, today we're not doing that type of stuff. You know, so when there's more eyes on the street that aren't just viewing, you know, the only answer to be policing, I think we get more, but you know, this is a city of 8 million people, probably more than that when you count people who are not documented. You know, things are going to happen, and I don't think that the way that we've been doing with the policing has been working. It's time to try something dramatically different, to transformational justice. If it's not working, hey, then maybe we can start talking about you know, how we can further empower you know, things. But I think we need to try something much different than what we've been doing.
I do want to add to what also was saying is that our district has been recently allocated money from the mayor's office to the 43rd precinct to go directly towards credible messengers and violence interrupters. So I think we are heading in the right direction. And as long as we can be having these open conversations, these hard conversations, conversations, we can actually you know, start having this transformative justice that we all direly need.
Thank you. And thank all three of you for your thoughts. There are a lot of things it seems like you guys agree upon, and a lot of things where you stand on the same side of the issue. So as we wrap up, I want to give everyone just 1 minute to do your concluding thoughts or talk about anything else that you want to talk about in that last final minute as we near 6 o'clock. And let's begin with Michael.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
We're concluding. It's 5:57. So you have 1 minute to just tell us your final thoughts in 1 minute. Go.
Yes. So, you know, I think it's time for the working class to stand up and get what they've earned. You know, I really have been honored to have tens of thousands of conversations with people in the district, and they all overwhelmingly want to stay. So the next council person needs to fully understand that and fight with that full force. I believe the best way to do it is to pass a comprehensive community-based plan. And, you know, I feel that I've had a good level of trust with the community, that people have seen me, have known me before, and know that, you know, my passion is for the community first. So I believe that I'm in a great position to both win this election and then also help the community pass a community-based plan so that they get to stay.
Thank you. Amanda, concluding thoughts.
Sure. Just want to say thank you to everyone watching and everyone that put this together. You know, I think the Bronx is deserving and Council District 18 is deserving. We need new leadership that can hit the ground on day one and actually understand what to do in City Hall and how to bring those investments back into the community to be a first line of defense in a post-pandemic New York. And I know I can do that for us with my 5 years at City Hall, with representing this community in the state committee for the last 3 years, with creating a mutual aid and project here over the last year since the height of the pandemic, and really my nonprofit experience creating jobs, managing a large budget for Bronxites to actually live and stay here and raise their families here. So I hope I can count on y'all's support to get there and represent us in City Hall in 2022.
Thank you. And Darlene, your final thoughts.
And so District 18 has an opportunity to elect bold leadership and someone who has a 20-year proven track record at City Hall and in Albany, fighting for the most marginalized groups of people. And this is not about like you've elected someone and relinquishing your power to an elected official. This is about you electing someone who's going to build a partnership with the constituents and making sure that this is rooted in, community ownership, building collective leadership, and also making sure that they are a part of the decision-making process. And this is what real democracy actually should look like. And for far too long, the Bronx has been, left out of the political process because people are just on survival mode, and we have an opportunity to really, have a paradigm shift to making sure that this is focused on equity and mobility, and you can do that by electing someone as myself. You could find my information on Darlene Jackson 2021.com, and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you to all of our candidates. Thank you to our viewers. Thank you on behalf of Schneps Media and PoliticsNY, myself and editor-in-chief Steve
Thank you
Witt.
very much. And you have my admiration. You're putting yourself out there in the public sector, and it's a good job you're doing. Thank you.
So we're happy here at Schneps Media, PoliticsNY to amplify all the voices of all the candidates. So we thank each of you for being a part of this. Good luck to you. Thank you, everyone, and continue to tune in to our website, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.